Hello, today I'm going to show you how I transformed my van from what it was before to what it is like now. So if you're interested, stay for the video and watch it until the end. For those who haven't seen the channel videos, I uploaded several showing how I gradually restored this van. They're all on the channel if you want to watch them, but well, we made many modifications, mostly bodywork and painting, thermal agility, also soundproofing. So this is a brief summary, a brief introduction for those who are not familiar with the project. We also covered the windows that I didn't want. We made a new floor. We did a couple of things inside. Also, I started making the furniture. I lined the walls with some polyvinyl chloride sheets to make them look better. Other isolated tasks included cutting the roof and installing pneumatic pistons, which added a nice touch and looked great. This is all in the video, so you can go watch them. It would be good. But, well, it's been a while since I touched the van, and in fact, there were big changes that were later presented to me. I removed the wooden structure because it turned out badly. It was weak, and I didn't like the result. And then it had a big factor. It was too big, and it wasn't what I had really thought of. The van at first, it was not only for traveling or using it as a motorhome, but also to transport the projects I was working on for my main channel, like the karting, which I couldn't transport before due to lack of means. So I directly wanted to remove that wooden structure, which I was also very bad at carpentry, and make another more dynamic structure with metals, where with smaller, thinner metals and taking up much less space, I could have the same rigidity and in the same way make a more dynamic design that would allow me to have a bar to use it just like a motorhome and at the same time also use it for transportation. For that, I used some 15x15 structural pipes cut to size with 45-degree angles for neatness. I sanded them, filed the ends, and then welded them, shaping it like a bar, let's say like a kind of rectangle, and then the part where the bar is supported with some brackets. This was going to be anchored to the wall, screwed in with some metal screws. So it left all the space below for whatever you want to put in, and at the same time allowed the bar to be supported on top. And that's how it was more or less presented. The truth is that it turned out very well and very measured with the dimensions we have to work with. Then I thought about adding a little curtain or something that can be slid to give it that furniture-like appearance in case we convert it into a motorhome, but, well, I still don't know whether to put it or not. For the structure of the sofa bed, I bought these hinges that were sold on the internet, which are hinges for sofa beds. That's what they were called. And they allow that movement that will leave our two pieces of wood that we put in bed or sofa position, basically. With the wood presented, I screwed it in as a reference, then using a leftover piece from this insulator. I measured roughly the wood that I was going to have to cut so that it reaches the legs of the hinge. That one that I had bought, I marked it on a piece of wood, and then I cut it directly to size and screwed it there to the structure of the van. This can make it seem somewhat flimsy or something bad, of poor quality. But the idea would be that all the weight supports down and not to any of the sides. So a piece of wood like this would have to support all the weight perfectly, since the weight would be from top to bottom and not to the sides. As I mentioned, I did the same. On the other side, I took the measurement of an identical piece of wood, and I also screwed it to the body of the van. I screwed it with some L's to the floor and to the walls. It also became very rigid. Once I screwed the wood of the backrest, I started testing it to see if this was really going to work, because I had never worked with this hinge before, and it also gave me some insecurity. But, well, seeing that I lifted it and it was exactly as I wanted, I went ahead with it, and I directly put the other piece of wood that I had, and I started to screw them together to see how it would turn out. It's worth noting that I didn't directly measure these pieces of wood. I cut them by eye, so to speak. The only thing I measured was the length, and then I placed them. I couldn't find any reference measurements online or elsewhere. I only cut the length so that the bed would be about 1 meter 70 or 1 meter 75. which is a bit more than my height. I'm not very tall, so I took those measurements and used them. You can use the measurements that correspond to your own height. As seen in the video, I initially made them longer, but cut them down to avoid overdoing it. So then I sanded them down and rounded the edges so they wouldn't hurt you or anything. Moreover, rounded edges are preferable on items that you might bump into. And once I was done with the sofa bed, it was the turn of the ceiling. I wanted to cover it with wood. So I went to see and found these two, which were the ones that looked most like my floor. In the end, I kept that one because it was good and looked the most alike. And this, actually, I thought it was going to be much easier than it was. This wood is a 5mm medium density fiberboard, and I thought it was going to be much easier to put it on. My idea was to cut them, obviously to size, then how to fit them into the uprights that the van has. Let's say in each corner it has some more sunken parts, to put it that way. The idea was to fit them into those parts and then press and let it in. But this was very challenging, especially when I first started. It's evident that everything was working out for me. I spent several hours until I more or less found the technique. And I think the technique was first to hook it in one place, then in the other. And it should be bulging, like downwards, and then press it from the middle. I know it's kind of difficult. And in fact, I had to use some techniques, a little bit unorthodox. Working alone, I had no assistance and had to manage everything simultaneously. I ended up doing it that way, and well, it worked, but I don't know if it's the best way to do it. You have to make sure that the wood you choose is elastic, because if not, you're going to break it. And, well, to make sure the roof doesn't move anymore, I used one of these screws for metal with 2 nuts and a kind of stop, let's say, so that the roof can't come down. I simply screwed them in, and the nuts were protruding. And those nuts acted as a stop so that the wood from the roof wouldn't fall. Let's say I put 3 on each side, 3 in the front, and 3 in the back on each panel. And it was quite firm, nothing came out. Then I started making the furniture in the same way that I took the measurements for the sofa bed. I did the same for the furniture and took out the curvature, which I then had to transfer to the woods to cut them and make sure they fit well and nothing sticks out. Then I sanded them and then I started to plot them. Actually, my first idea was to paint them like lacquer in white, but I didn't really know how to do it, and I also didn't know if I was going to be totally convinced by the color. So first I suggested plotting the total, thinking it wouldn't look too bad, to get an idea of the expected appearance. For that, I bought a shiny white plotter vinyl, and it's very easy. You just have to peel it off, then stick it on the wood like it's a giant sticker. Then you cut off the tips like with a square. You have to make sure that the tips can cut it in such a way that you can fold it in afterwards. And then that's exactly what you have to do. Fold the vinyl inwards and start trying to make it as neat as possible. This probably won't turn out very well for you. When you fold it, it's not going to stick well, or it's going to look kind of ugly. But well, it's just a matter of applying a little heat. And as soon as you apply it, you'll see that the vinyl sticks, but very well. It's like a completely different product. And what about all the dents or things that remain? They simply come out by applying a little heat and then going over it with a cloth or a dishcloth, like I did, and I ended up with a very good product. I was pleasantly surprised by how well it turned out. Very shiny and good. It even looks painted, and in fact, if I like this color, I don't think I'll paint it. I think I'm just going to leave it like this because the result was very good. After this, I started assembling the furniture already inside my house. Assembling everything inside the van didn't make sense, as it would be double the effort. And it ended up like this. This design is the one I made in SketchUp. I uploaded it to the channel a while ago. I followed the same design. I didn't change anything. The link to the interior video can be found in the corresponding video's description. If there's one thing I'm not skilled at, it's furniture making and handiwork. Carpentry, in fact, was never my strong suit, and I think it never will be. What I did was grab all the wood, with these hinges on the inside, which I don't know if it's ideal. Surely someone who really knows about carpentry is going to tell me that there were thousands of better ways. But well, this was the idea that I chose. And I also used it to attach it to the floor of the van, which was also made of wood, and also to attach it to the walls. It turned out very well for what I want. It's honestly quite good. If there is a better way, please put it in the comments. And the people who are going to do it might be able to read it, and they can do it that way. Then, well, I finished taking the measurements of the remaining wood, which was only a couple. And I started to make the door, which was also just putting on a hinge, and that's it. For the bed, as it was also somewhat unstable, especially at the tip, in the only place where it was unstable, which was right at the tip, which did not have good support. I made some wooden legs with some hinges, and one of these magnets that are used to grab the little doors of the bathrooms. Put it on so they don't open, but then I changed it for these self-locking hinges. Because the truth is that the other idea didn't convince me much, and these were basically the same, but well done. Although still, the weight of the legs made them fall back down when I lifted it. So, well, I think later I'm going to put some little hooks or something like that to hold them and prevent them from falling. Then I painted all the wood of the chair black because I didn't want them to be seen. Basically, I wanted them to be as discreet as possible. And I think matte black was the best choice. It was what hid it the most. After this, I started thinking mostly about the accessories I was going to put on it. And one of the things I would like to have would be a television or something similar. I ruled out the television because it took up a lot of space, and it was space that you couldn't get back. I mean, you either have the television or you don't, and I thought it was best to have a projector. So I had one of these old electric curtain systems, a mechanism that is actually a motor inside an aluminum pipe. It's a motor with a reduction, and if I cut it a bit, I could use it perfectly to make a screen for a projector. One of these mini projectors that I'm going to show you at the end, which one did I choose? But well, it stayed there. I placed it behind the driver and passenger seats. When I lower the screen, it divides the environments. And so they can't see you when you were in the back sleeping or something like that. I tested it and it worked great. For the projector, I chose a mini one that runs on 12 volts. And to hang it from the ceiling, I used one of these adapters, which was from a GoPro, which allows you to move it up and down. It has a small rope similar to the projector, simple and straightforward. I screwed it to the central beam of the van and it stayed there quite sturdy. Now, part of the screen was missing. I bought a screen that honestly was very cheap, and I cut it to the size I needed. To then stick it to the aluminum tube, I stuck it with one of these tapes that are very resistant. Since I'm never going to fully unroll it, it's always somewhat halfway unrolled. I don't think it will come off anyway. The curtain system works perfectly. I tested it, and the stain is permanent. In fact, when I do the electrical installation of the van, I'm going to put a switch so it can go up and down and work as it should. All that remained was testing the projector's performance. It worked poorly in bright light, but very well in low light conditions. The truth is that the image is very clear, and for what I paid for it, I'm really happy. The image quality is very good for a projector with these specifications, although not perfect. In the end, I spent about 1,500 pesos, around $25 nowadays, on the two things, which was much cheaper than buying a television and turned out much better. I'm also thinking about putting my old Play there in the van, so comment on what you think to see if we put it on the projector and for the kitchen issue. And that's what I bought. This, which honestly is the most practical thing I've seen so far and what I like the most. Because you don't need to have a gas bottle or any of those weird things. It's a stove with just one burner, where instead of a gas bottle, and that's where these refillable gas cartridges go, which are very cheap and very practical. You can take whatever you want if you're not tied to carrying a heavy gas bottle or something similar that you just put on. You lower this safety knob, you turn this plate, and it works. You can turn it on and cook, and it has a decent autonomy. I haven't tried it yet, but the manufacturer said it lasted a long time. Then remove the safety and store it. You can put it here, for example, or you can put it here, or you can put it on the table that I made for outdoor cooking. You can put it wherever you want. That's the good thing. You can take it out of the van and you can put it wherever you want. Also, I was able to store it in the place I showed you in the other video, gaining a bit of space in the van. The seats were in terrible condition and needed reupholstering, but they weren't. I simply don't have the money right now. So what I did was buy one of these covers, which is simply that, a cover for seats for this type of seats. That is simply put on top like this and held with these threads from the bottom, tied however you want. And it looks like this. It's not that it's perfect. In fact, it's not the best way in the world, but it's pretty decent. And for now, until I have money to reupholster it, it's fine. This is how the interior turned out with custom-made futon-type seats. I'm not sure it's the best choice. I might use others instead. This outcome resulted in a spacious area, including ample storage space. In fact, if we put them in the back and lift the couch, it leaves the most spacious area of this van, specifically for transporting things and not just as a motorhome type. At the supermarket, I found an offer of 80% discount on the second comforter. So I said, well, I take advantage and buy the comforter for the van, and it stayed like that. I mean, it's excellent. It's a great comforter, and I got it very cheap. So it fits like a glove. It's great. And then, as decoration, I put one of these garland-type lights at night, which look very good at night. The van looks very good. I love how it turned out. If you like this project, please support it by giving it a like. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on future developments. To the van, still a hug bye.